Every year, without fail, some of the players that are struggling in smaller tournaments are going to get picked up by bigger teams, and lo and behold, they're gonna become the talk of the town. ZTR and Susp went from being completely underutilized to making the major. We're currently seeing Makaz and Kaisuke be watched like hawks to eventually become these big tier 1 prospects, and hell, even Donk was getting stomped by Mouse like 6 months before he totally transformed and became the only conversation that people were having in modern CS. Now, I'm not going to sit here and tell you that Kaisuke and Makaz are going to be the next big things, because they've already been scouted by Spirit and Na'Vi. There's not much of a secret in that. This is more about players that I think should be getting a chance in the top teams of CS, because they have been a bit underappreciated and perhaps overlooked. So this is my criteria for what makes a hidden gem of a player. You've got to be young, preferably under 20 years old, currently be in a team that is under top 30, you need to be outperforming your teammates heavily, have room for development, and at least, from what it seems like, be a bit cheap to acquire. I mean, I guess because it's hard to get pricing on players, but a good deal is basically one that isn't already in the academy of a big organization. So without further ado, let's get started shopping at the dollar store of donks. My number one pick, because I don't want to waste any of your time, is XieLo. XieLo. Or as a colleague of mine told me, XieLo. I don't know really, but at least the name looks cool on paper. He's a player I like for a few reasons. It seems like he checks all of the boxes of a player that is meant to be great. Young, check. Hard roll but still overperforming, check. Teammate stuck under 1.0 ratings but he's still doing well, double check. Silky smooth hair more suited for shampoo commercials over Counter-Strike? Hell yeah. Let's look at some of his stats recently. If you look at any really strong entry, you'll see this as a common theme. Stats are on the sides of the extremes. When your team is getting absolutely clapped, you're probably going to go negative. When you're on fire, your rating's going to be through the roof. And it's really hard to have a lukewarm game as an entry because your opening kill is either going to make the game or it's going to destroy it. And I guess in that sense, Donk is a bit of a rarity because he seems to perform even when his team isn't, and that can't really be applied to every entry fragger. I'm going to look at some of his demos and try to quantify what my eye test is seeing personally. You load into the pistol round of this map, you already see why XieLo is so brilliant. His USP already looks tier 1, and he's got the composure of someone who looks like he's playing against worse opponents when he is actually playing against a team that is either about even or better ranking. There are tons of moments on the CT side where he's doing well, but just look at how comfortable he is when the fights are disadvantageous and he's got multiple targets. He really does play like he's just a better player. His anchoring on the CT side is just as good as his T entry, and I think it's a big reason why his current team is doing as well as they do on the CT side. Now here's a match where he's playing against Team Big. XieLo runs out of long, he runs into 3 awkward duels, and he's able to adjust to all 3 of them. This is a testament to how good he is in unrehearsed scenarios. The pit player makes a very unorthodox movement, he adjusts his spray, wins the second fight half-flashed, and he even adjusts his crosshair while falling into pit for the 3rd duel. Is there a bit of luck in all that? Sure, but you can't deny that he's fast at making corrections when he's given awkward engagements, and I think that is one of the hallmarks of being a good entry. On top of that, across this map, he's going to find a bunch of really nice timings, even against the experienced players that are big. Look at how aware he is here. Despite an encounter with the B side player and having a teammate watching for him, he still knows there's a corner on the left side that Selter can't protect him from, and that's why he needs to watch his back as he's scaling into B. If you watch XieLo long enough, you'll realize this. He's got the aim, he's got the youth, and he's as balanced as they come. The edges that seem rough now will soon be polished when he's in a better team. You know how Chopper probably wakes up every day being grateful that Donk is on his team? That's probably how Selter is too, but he's not as good as Chopper. There's a ton of stuff that I could cover about this guy, but we're gonna keep it short for now. When he gets a big team, he's gonna be a real threat. Now, before I talk about my number 2 pick, I'd like to show you something that I got a really good deal on for only $1,000. This sick-ass Counter-Strike blanket from a shady Chinese website. Unfortunately, the credit card companies are now knocking at my door, so if we could up the subs on this channel, I might be able to grift a sponsor that pays for my horrible Counter-Strike expenditures, so it'd be epic if you could click the button. My second pick is almost a bit tragic, because if you look at Metasport's previous lineup, Out of all these players, you would think that before kicking ZTR and SUSP, it would be Nilo that would be the first one to make it to a big tournament. He's ridiculously good, and the terrible support around him is why he's been stuck in Tier 2 hell for a very long time. Seriously, watch any game where he's playing against Tier 1 opponents, and he's really the only one that can perform. Again, the hallmarks of a gem are there. You've got a terrible team, you've got ridiculous stats at a young age. He's got it all. Let's look at some of his demos against way better teams. Now, I don't know what the stats would show, but in this demo against Complexity, his first bullet accuracy looks very impressive. He makes a lot of these smooth movements as well that are very cool to see. There's no panicking in his fights, which is indicative of a brilliantly calm and collected player, even when he's playing against Complexity, which is a Goliath compared to Metaschool. We get to see more of that against Nip, where he has some of the smoothest pre-aim I've ever seen. He also has very stable aim as seen by how he plays with the pistol, and he has very few wasted movement. Also, as a side note, one of the big reasons why his movement is the way it is because he plays on an EDPI of 720. This means that he's on a much lower sensitivity than most pro players. When your sensitivity is low, you can't afford to make huge corrections with your mouse, and your gameplay naturally inclines towards being more precise in the first place. Low sensitivity players are characteristically the ones that are always going to hit the easy shots and even make the hard ones look easy by always being ready for them. If I had to sum up his gameplay, I would probably say that his gameplay has no pace. He's comfortable holding angles for a long period of time, he methodically finds fights, and he often looks like he has zero panic even when he's playing against way better opposition. Given the right circumstances, Nilo is actually a player that I think will eventually be a contender for a big Tier 1 lineup. My third and final pick is Ryu from Montigen. Okay, he's a tad bit older at 20 years old, but he's still a rookie, and I consider this his debut year in pro play because I kinda don't care about these previous teams that he's been in. Ryu has had a bit of an interesting run. He was first scouted by Monty and put into the academy roster of Montigen. Then after Bro and Sumdai Young left the team, he was thrown into the deep end of the pool by facing against the following team. Yeah, there's some big ones in there. And he wasn't even there for a very long time. He had to go back to the academy squad, and he was only in the main lineup for the sake of playing ECL Jönköping in ESL Pro League Season 19. His trial wasn't even a trial by fire. He was put directly in the wood chipper. Going from academy lineup to straight up fighting demons like FaZe, Furiel, Liquid, and OG, it's crazy work. There wasn't even much of an adjustment period for him. Despite this madness, he still had some really close games, and he had moments of brilliance such as the game against FaZe where he went 28-15 on Nuke. In my opinion, that's pretty commendable. Now that he's back in Montigen, Ryu is continuing to farm. Outside of the occasional stinker, Ryu is so much better than the tier that it shows. I think given a bit of an adjustment period and if he's actually allowed to grow at a slightly slower pace as a player and he's given expert coaching, he could be a real threat and he could be the next big thing to come out of the UK scene. Now, this video wouldn't be complete without some honorable mentions. I really like Tenir from Gun 5, but he's kinda old. Zwei from Namiga, but he's kinda well known now, and I didn't want to point out players that are already picked up by really strong scouting like Spirits, but I think it's important to note that with the limelight always being on Kaiosuke these days, it's easy to overlook some talents like Alkaren for his sniping and Mokujin for his entry work on the Spirit Academy roster. They could definitely find some really good homes in main lineups rather than an Academy roster despite their ages. Mokujin and Alkaren being only 16 and 17 respectively, you're definitely going to be hearing a lot more about them in about a year or two. And that is going to be way after Kaiosuke's already been promoted to the main lineup or sold to another team. That's it. If you enjoyed this video, pressing subscribe will bring you back to my channel in about a week or two for more Counter-Strike.